Am Sonntag starben der iranische Präsident Ebrahim Raisi sowie der iranische Außenminister Hossein Amir-Abdollahian bei einem Hubschrauberabsturz nahe der Grenze zu Aserbaidschan. Laut Darstellung der iranischen Medien soll der Hubschrauber vom US-Typ Bell 212 aufgrund kritischer Wetterbedingungen verunglückt sein. Der Vorfall löste weltweit Bestürzung und große Sorge aus. Israel und die USA erklärten unmittelbar, dass sie mit dem Absturz nichts zu tun hätten. Iran selbst hat bislang immer nur von einem Unfall gesprochen und Ermittlungen eingeleitet. Wie bewertest du den Vorfall? Wie sicher funktioniert ein Hubschrauber vom Typ Bell 212 bei den geschilderten Wetterbedingungen? Sind diese ein plausibler Grund für den Hubschrauberabsturz?
Bad weather is bad weather, regardless of the kind of helicopter you're flying. The principles of lift, don't change because you're flying a French helicopter, a German helicopter, or an American helicopter. Historically speaking, the combination of helicopters, mountains, and bad weather almost always ends up bad for the helicopter and whoever's on board the helicopter, and that appears to be the case of what happened here. There were 3 helicopters flying. They noticed, according to the Iranians, a localized weather anomaly. The 3 helicopters were advised to fly over the weather anomaly. Something happened to one of the helicopters. They're still doing the evaluation. My understanding is that a freak low weather phenomena took place that literally pushed the helicopter into the mountain. They'll do their investigation. At this time, I don't see anything that suggests foul play. This has all the appearances of a tragedy. And right now, I think that's the way that the Iranian government is portraying it.
Die Frage ist, warum haben die Iraner die Hubschrauber unter diesen Umständen fliegen lassen? Warum sind sie so ein großes Risiko eingegangen mit Präsident Raisi an Bord?
My understanding is that the helicopters are operating under visual flight rules when they took off from the place where the president was doing a ceremony to open up a dam between Iran and Azerbaijan. And visual flight rules are totally acceptable, safe. These weren't severe mountains, meaning that you weren't asking the aircraft to do performance characteristics that were exceeded the envelope of aircraft performance. And this weather phenomena came in unpredicted, and it occurred. Helicopters are an accepted form of transportation for heads of state. The American president famously flies in Marine One, and I would imagine that all nations have a presidential helicopter fleet. The Iranians have one. The Bell 212 is a very safe aircraft. If maintained properly, there's no reason to believe that the Iranians haven't been maintaining it properly. One would have to question why you would let your president fly in a poorly maintained aircraft. But the fact is, it doesn't seem to be maintenance as the causation of this disaster, but weather. I don't see anything out of the ordinary. This is just one of those tragic situations where events that could not be predicted took place, and circumstances led to this tragedy. Again, an investigation will be done. We are early in the process. We also should point that I'm sitting in New York and you're sitting in Germany, and we're far removed from the actual scene of the incident. Neither one of us are aviation forensic experts, and I would believe most of your audience isn't either. We're prisoners to the data that we get. Right now, the data suggests that this was just a tragic accident.
Anfang April hat der Iran durch den israelischen Luftschlag auf das iranische Konsulat in Damaskus mehrere entscheidende Militärkommandeure verloren. Am Wochenende starben Präsident Raisi und Außenminister Amir Abdollahian, die führenden Persönlichkeiten der iranischen Außenpolitik. Unter Raisi ist Iran den BRICS beigetreten und hat sich außenpolitisch stark in Richtung Russland und China orientiert. Peking sprach davon, mit Raisi einen großen Freund des chinesischen Volkes verloren zu haben. Wie stark wiegt der Verlust für den Iran? Und obwohl das iranische Außenministerium erklärt hat, es werde sich nichts an der außenpolitischen Orientierung ändern, welche Bedeutung hat der Tod Raisis für die iranische Geostrategie?
There are two things that need to be considered here. One is the strength of Ibrahim Raisi as an individual, his resume, his impressive resume from an Iranian governance standpoint. He had a tremendous amount of credibility within Iran. And with that credibility comes the ability to get things done based upon the strength of personality and the credibility you bring to the table. He has overseen some major events, transitional events for Iran, not just joining BRICS, but Ibrahim Raisi was the president when Iran reestablished deterrence dominance over Israel through the attack, the missile attack in April. This is an event that the West still hasn't come to grips with. And it is an event that unfolded with a great deal of maturity and patience and responsibility. He did something that is normally only accomplished by physically defeating an enemy and inflicting severe casualties. And he did it without shedding a single Israeli life or destroying any significant Israeli infrastructure. This is the sign of mature leadership. The world is going to miss Ibrahim Raisi. Iran, however, is a modern state that has government institutions. It is not a dictatorship of one. Ibrahim Raisi was a president elected, not a dictator appointed. Iran will elect a new president. This isn't the first time in Iran's history that tragedy or conflict has taken away a national leader. If you go back during the Iran-Iraq War, on more than one occasion, important leaders were assassinated or killed. Again, Iran possesses institutions of governance, institutions of security that have policies in place that have been put together and promulgated by the collective insight, input, and wisdom of the Iranian state, not just one individual. So we now know that the first vice president of Iran has been named the acting president under Constitution of Iran. He will work with the Speaker of the Parliament and the head of judiciary to form an election committee for a new president. He has already done this, and they've announced, I believe, June 28th or 29th is the date of the election. Iran will elect another president, and Iran will continue. The policies that Ibrahim Raisi was in charge of implementing were policies that had been staffed throughout the Iranian government. So the Iranian government knows full well what the intent of these policies are. And any new president comes in will inherit these policies and be directed to implement these policies. So I don't think you're going to see any meaningful change. Personalities, though, are a big factor. Ibrahim Raisi was a man with a very strong personality. I can say this firsthand because I met with him in September of last year. I was part of a group of people that were able to have a discussion with the president, ask questions of the president, receive answers from the president. And you could tell when you met him, when you listened to him, when you observed him, that this was a man of strong character, not a dilettante, a serious man. Those are hard to find, and Iran will have a challenge to elect somebody who is of that caliber of Ibrahim Raisi. It's also a big loss for the Iranian Islamic Republic because, in addition to being a capable leader, he was a religious man of some distinction, and the Ayatollah Khamenei, the current supreme leader of Iran, regardless of what one thinks of his credentials and abilities, he's a mortal human, meaning that at some point in time, he too shall die. And at that point in time, Iran needs to select a new supreme leader. And the world needs, in hopes that Iran selects somebody who is pragmatic, somebody who understands the necessity of Iran peacefully coexisting with its neighbors, even while it retains its unique Islamic, status. So Ibrahim Raisi was widely believed to be a leading contender to replace Khamenei. He's now not there. So Iran now has a double hole to fill, not just to put in a new president, but to find somebody who could replace Khamenei if and when that time comes. So it's going to be a big challenge, but I think Iran is up to the task. It's a modern nation with all of the institutions of governance and the resilience that comes with a constitutional form of government. And Iran has shown no reason not to believe that they will proceed, in a responsible manner and continue the policy direction that Ibrahim Raisi had taken the nation on.
Die Nachricht vom Hubschrauberabsturz verbreitete sich wie ein Lauffeuer global. Laut Medienberichten ging in Washington die Angst um, Raisis Tod könnte der Auftakt für den Dritten Weltkrieg sein. Die US-Regierung kam eilig zusammen und stand in unmittelbarer Alarmbereitschaft. Mittlerweile hat sich die Panik gelegt und Washington fährt wieder die bekannte geopolitische Linie. Am Dienstag antwortete US-Außenminister Antony Blinken auf Nachfrage von US-Senatoren, dass die USA nur pro forma ihr Beileid für Ibrahim Raisi ausgesprochen habe. Tatsächlich sei, laut Blinken, das iranische Volk viel besser dran ohne Raisi. Was sagst du zu solchen Aussagen deiner Regierung? Was für ein Verständnis von Diplomatie steckt dahinter? Wollen die USA gar keine globale Deeskalation mehr?
The U.S. has never wanted global de-escalation. The U.S. only wants permanent hegemony. Any articulation of de-escalation is a tactic, not a strategy. It's a temporary measure to buy time until the U.S. can bring together the appropriate economic, military, and political tools to achieve the desired outcome. And in the case of Iran, the desired outcome is, of course, regime change, toppling of the theocracy, replacing it with a pro-Western, quote-unquote, democracy. Although I do believe that history shows that we're more than happy to have an autocracy in the form of a monarch or even a dictatorship in form of a military junta. Anybody but the current Islamic theocracy. One of the things that Ibrahim Raisi brought up in the meeting in September was the civil unrest that broke out in Iran over the death of the tragic death of the girl who was arrested for not wearing a headscarf properly, and her death was used by the West to trigger massive unrest. And Ibrahim Raisi made it clear that this was more than simply a large-scale demonstrations, that this was actually a concerted effort by the West for regime change, that this was a revolution that the West had instigated using this girl's tragic death as a trigger. It was a coup. It was an insurrection that was organized and supported and sustained by Western intelligence services. And the Iranian defeat of this insurgency was a very big victory. And Ibrahim Raisi, said that the West doesn't understand how hard these intelligence services tried to overthrow the Iranian government, how close they came to succeeding. He said that it was a very dangerous situation for a while, and then the magnitude of their failure. In Iran, the United States, I think, is reading the signals wrong. You see, there was an election, the one that brought in Ibrahim Raisi, and the turnout was low. And from an Iranian internal perspective, They place a heavy emphasis on the turnout, dating back to the times of Ayatollah Khomeini, who founded the Islamic Republic. He said that it's essential that the Iranian people participate in the election because their participation shows the viability and their support for the Islamic Republic. And historically, Iran has had very impressive turnouts. This was not so impressive. And so people have read into this that support for the theocracy is waning, that the Iranian people are fed up with the theocratic rule, and that the time is ripe for the West to be able to install, a replacement government. I would caution against embracing such an outcome or such a narrative too closely. Take a look at the streets of Iran today. Look at Tehran for the burial of Ibrahim Raisi. 4 million people are in the streets. Millions of others filled the streets of other Iranian cities. This tragedy has brought the Iranian people together like nothing else has in modern times. And I would hasten to wager that in June, when this election occurs for the next president, that the turnout will be extraordinarily high, that the level of interest in Iran for sustaining its current form of government is very high, very strong. So anybody who thinks, like Antony Blinken alleges in his comments, that the Iranian people are fed up, they should think again. Of course, there are elements within Iranian society who are fed up. These are pro-Western elements that can trace their lineage back to the time of the Shah. These are the political and economic elites of northern Tehran. But that's not the majority of the Iranian people. The majority of the Iranian people fervently support the Islamic Republic and are mourning the loss of a beloved leader, and I believe will actively participate in the election for a new president.